if you had to look into a crystal ball as to where the psychedelic space or industry will be in 24 months from now, what does that look like? All right, everyone, welcome in to Trade to Black this week as we talk psychedelics this morning. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Hope you've been having a couple of great weeks as we head into the Christmas season. As usual, if you like the content we're producing, greatly appreciated. If you could share this to your network, click on that bell for notifications and leave some comments below on what you think of this podcast and, more importantly, where you think psychedelics is going into 2023. Okay, let's begin today's podcast and welcome in. He's the CEO of LOBE Sciences, which trades under the CSC under the ticker symbol LOBE. Phil Young joins us. Phil, great to see you. And I know we've been having some conversations for quite a few months behind the scenes, but it's finally great to connect.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Shad. I look forward to our discussion.
Yeah, Phil, where are you located, based out of?
The company's headquartered in Vancouver. Myself and my clinical regulatory folks are down in the United States, Florida and Virginia.
Okay. And you find you're getting a lot of momentum from people in the U.S. as far as the story that you're trying to manufacture and build out?
Yeah, we are starting to get a lot of pickup interest here in the United States as well as up in Canada. And the U.S. was behind picking up the psychedelic story, behind the curve as compared to Canada. So things are picking up more here, as we saw in the earlier days in the Canadian markets.
Well, as we know, psychedelics, a lot of people have been educated over the last year. It's biotech, and it has been moving relatively slow. I think big things are on the horizon for 2023, and this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on, where I begin with who you are, and most importantly, you anticipate a lot of announcements that are going to be unfolding over the next little bit. The first thing I look at is your share float, which is a little over 38 million, which is a tight float. Little volume has moved this stock fast in the past whenever news has been posted, including moving from 3 cents to 28 cents back in September of this year. So your research, you're focusing on the development of new proprietary chemicals that are associated with psilocybin. So why this field? Why psilocin?
Well, psilocin is the active moiety in psilocybin. Nature made psilocybin basically as a prodrug. So in order to stabilize psilocin, nature added an additional molecular structure to it so that it would not degrade rapidly. My scientists, when we were manufacturing psilocybin, informed me that it was a lot less expensive just to make psilocin. 60% of our cost came in after we synthesized psilocin to make the prodrug psilocybin. Historically, people couldn't make a stable psilocin. After 10 months of work, we filed patents on 9 separate psilocin compounds, all stable, and we're taking the 2 best-looking ones forward. We call those L130 and L131.
Why do you think more companies in the space have not focused on this approach? Like, why? It makes sense, but why hasn't more companies done this, you think?
Well, I think for us, it's twofold. One, myself and my team are biotech execs for 20, 30, 40 years, some of us. And we've focused on developing drugs, and we focused on identifying new chemical entities, chemicals that are patentable. Psilocybin in and of itself is not patentable. Getting a use patent for it for an indication in a crowded marketplace is also very difficult. So the issues we wanted to address was the fact that we had something that was novel, would be considered an NCE by the FDA. And in the case of L131, we think we could get breakthrough drug status for that as well. So it's an important differentiator for the company.
Let's focus on those 2 chemical compounds, L130 and L131, which are derivative psilocin, salt, and am I pronouncing this correctly, esters?
Yes.
So can you explain furthermore on what this is and obviously what it means?
Well, the L130 I'll start with is the first compound we're taking into human clinical studies. We'll be dosing our first study in the next couple of weeks as soon as we receive final clearance from the drug enforcement arm and can start dosing patients. The protocol is ready. L130 is a simple salt structure. It's important of psilocin. It's important to note that for this compound, we'll be able to use a 505(b)(2) approach, which is a much more streamlined approach to the FDA approval for a compound and rely on published data. That's very important. So we'll be taking that forward in the next few weeks, dosing our first phase 1 study. The data from that phase 1 study will be available early next year in 23. Right after that study is completed, we'll be doing another phase 1, what you call a phase 1B study, where we'll be looking at several doses of that compound. And that leads us right into the first phase 2 study, which we'll do in Australia. All that's L130. We're excited about the opportunity that drug gives us. The drug is very stable so far. It looks really good, and we're excited about the data. L131 is a slightly different twist. It's a stable psilocin salt. It's almost like a prodrug, but it's a new chemical entity. So for that compound, we'll be moving into what's called preclinical studies in the next month, as soon as we can get the import-export issues worked out. But we'll be moving that into a couple animal models. And importantly so, we need to do that because once we have data, we'll be filing with the FDA for pediatric orphan drug application for L131. That would also give us the opportunity to get a priority review voucher. Those vouchers are highly, highly valuable. And as you see in the history of priority review vouchers, companies can sell those for upwards of $100 million when their drug gets approved.
These two chemical entities, do you find with this approach, as far as streamlining, that the timeline's quicker than, say, other compounds with regards to dealing with the FDA?
Well, certainly for us, in focusing on L130, it could be a very quick path to pivotal phase 3 studies within a year. We could be starting our first phase 3 study. That's very, very fast in the world of drug development. And it's important because what we're doing, we think, is a very disruptive approach to the whole psychedelic market. We're based on the science and based on what my team has identified, we'll be dosing sequentially for 5 to 7 days, sub-psychedelic doses. So this is not microdosing that people are familiar with. This is a high dose that doesn't induce a hallucinatory activity within the brain. We believe that sequential dosing, hitting the right receptor over a period of days, will give us the same outcome, initially focused on certain forms of anxiety, as you might get with the high dose hallucinatory confinement to counseling. We think that the opportunity is massive to create a global pharmaceutical market. You need to have something, one, that lets patients stay with the doctors they are familiar with, and this will happen. The doctors will be able to follow their patients in a continuum of care, and the payers, more importantly, the payers will be familiar with a model like this: a prescription, take your pills, go home, take your drugs. It's a very important differentiating factor for us. LOBE Sciences is disrupting the marketplace and taking a different approach. And I think this approach is going to pan out to be the right way to go.
Do you continue to build relationships with other players in the space? Like, have you had many conversations?
Yeah, I've had conversations with CEOs across the board.
I bring that up just because we will see a ton of mergers and acquisitions within this industry, probably in the next 12 to 18 months. But it's going to be all about the IP that you've developed. So that's why I'm trying to put the pieces together as far as the streamlining and if it moves a lot quicker. But one of the things I also wanted to bring up too is the research that's being conducted in Australia, which for my viewers, if they're not aware, is a very friendly jurisdiction when it comes to drug development. And what I mean by that is the government offers research grants along with your recent financing rounds. So do you care to explain or elaborate further on the advantages of conducting studies in Australia and what type of government grants you're receiving?
Yeah, it's fabulous. I've done work in Australia for 10, 15 years now. The several benefits. Number one, it's very fast into the clinic and into patients. Whereas in the United States takes a little longer. We don't need to have an open IND with the FDA to do studies down in Australia. It's all governed by their regional investigator review boards, which is important. But equally as important is their federal government refund, R&D tax credit, as they call it. We get 43.5% rebate for every dollar we spend on R&D in Australia. That's a phenomenal savings for the company. 43.5%.
43.5. Wow. I didn't realize
it's
it was
great.
that high.
Yeah. And we combine that with the commitment we have with our partner, Canthian Capital, to fund the studies that we're doing down there. Initial commitment is 1.5 million, but they will go much higher should we do a study that is larger and requires that. So we have a great opportunity with Canthian with the
Wow.
federal government to do things very cost efficiently and to drive data much faster than we could anywhere else in the world.
What's the you talk or you sound positive when dealing with the government down there, and obviously with the grants that they're providing. But for the most part, how are a lot of government officials viewing this industry when it comes to the open idea of the research and data that this whole industry is collecting?
The government in Australia is positive, and we have a great partner, a contract research organization called Ingenue. They're focused on psychedelics. They're doing some cannabis work as well, but they have a great relationship with the government entities that we have to deal with and interact with. In addition to that, one of my advisors, our advisors, is works for MindMed Australia. It's the largest organization in Australia that is a proponent of legalizing and advancing the cause of psychedelic medicine.
Um, as I said off the top of the podcast, your share float is very low. As I said before, when you posted news in the past, the share price has moved quickly. As I said, 3 cents to 28 cents back in September. So, what can investors anticipate with regards to projects you're currently working on and what that roadmap looks like?
Thanks for asking. We've got a lot of things that we'll be talking to our shareholder base and stakeholder base about over the next couple of months. Clearly, we'll announce our first patient dosing in our first phase one study. We'll announce the initiation of our preclinical work with L131. We'll announce the results of our first phase one study in L130 in January sometime. We'll announce the initiation in late January, early February of a new phase one study with multiple dosing arms. And that will lead us right into Q2, where we'll be doing our phase two study. Throughout that time, we will also be keeping the market updated on the activities associated with our orphan drug application with the FDA, and the request for a priority review voucher.
So you expect that basically a funnel of news to occur and develop over the next 60 days is what you're hinting at?
Yes, and that's our goal. We're moving quickly, and we want to continue that. We've made a lot of progress in just literally in just 12 months. We've gone from a company with no compounds to evaluate to a company with a stable of compounds, taking two of them and doing our first human study. We're very excited about what the opportunity brings, and we're very excited about disrupting the traditional psychedelic market.
I have to ask because you're generating more and more attention in the U.S. Is the goal to be in the NASDAQ soon?
We certainly have had discussions, and we'll continue to discuss with various banks about doing that, but that certainly would be a good opportunity for the company and the shareholders.
Last thing I wanted to ask, and I love asking this question to a lot of CEOs in this space because it's a brand new industry. What's your background? Why'd you get into this industry?
I love drug development. I'm a biotech exec going all the way back to the days when I started at Genentech, when Genentech was just in a very early stage biotech company. And I got the biotech bug. And from that time, I've gone on to be CEO of 5 other public companies. I've had some very good exits for my
Wow.
shareholders. We've brought some wonderful drugs to market. Not everything succeeds. That's scientific drug discovery and development, but we brought some wonderful drugs to market. We've done very well for our shareholder base across the board, and I never get tired of it. I grew up as a business guy. I'm still a business guy, but I love the science end of life and bringing new compounds to help patients. And in the end, that's what we focus on.
Well, with all your years of drug development, if you had to look into a crystal ball as to where the psychedelic space or industry will be in 24 months from now, what does that look like?
I think you'll see a lot more data coming out. And I think what we're going to find out is if our hypothesis is correct, if our subpsychedelic dosing gives us the results we want, I think you'll see a demarcation of what's going to happen. I think in the long run, because we do have a joint venture on a program called Chrysalis, developing a virtual reality and artificial intelligence for in the clinic dosing as well as virtual counseling. I think a subset of patients are going to need psychedelic induction as well as counseling, no doubt about it. But I think overall, there's across the globe, hundreds of millions, in the United States, tens of millions of patients who can benefit from these drugs. And there's just not enough trained psychologists, psychiatrists to take them into a clinic and give them an induction dose and hallucinatory dose of a compound and then follow them. So I think what we're going to see is the people that are doing that are going to start to generate some good data, I hope. What we're doing, we'll be generating some data. I hope it's going to be as positive as we believe it will be. And then we have two different approaches to treating serious conditions such as treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, severe forms of anxiety, pediatric indications. And I think that's where we're going to head. I think we'll have some consolidation, as you've mentioned, and that's fine. It's good. It's healthy. And we're always open to talking to companies and seeing if it makes sense. No one's against that. But I think that's what we'll see. And I think the companies that are focused and have a history and a background in drug development and bringing compounds to market, I think going to be the successful ones. And given my history and my team's track record of doing that, I think we're certainly among the top players to do that.
So I would think that drug development, it's not cheap, it's costly. You're looking, I would assume, to raise money. This is, I guess, where it comes in, where the low share float and a circle of news can really spike the share price. Is that the idea, I guess, over the next 30 to 60 days?
Yeah, we're a biotech company, so you're always looking for money because you're going to be spending it before you make it. Definitely, we will
Yeah, of course.
opportunistically hit the markets when we get the share price up and the interest is there. And obviously, we're getting into the Christmas season now, and things are kind of slowing down. But I think next year, what I'm hearing from bankers, analysts I'm speaking with, people are cautiously optimistic that January is going to start off well.
Yeah.
And as we push our news out and as people hear the story, I think the price will respond and we'll see where we stand with raising capital at that point.
Yeah. Well, that's why it grabbed my interest, is because I'm like, why is this, share price move so quickly? But the share float obviously is one that I was brought to my attention, to say the least. But even any announcement, I know in this industry right now, it's a wait and see kind of mode. But from what I'm hearing and seeing with this industry, there's positive data that continues to develop. 2023, I think, is going to be a very, very promising year for the industry based on, just the continued data that's taking place. But in your case, it's a little bit different from most players in the space, is that your share float being so low and one announcement can actually move this quite quickly versus, say, other companies that have larger outstanding shares. But I appreciate the feedback, and best of luck over these next couple of weeks. And most importantly, let's keep in touch, because it's a fascinating story.
Definitely will. I appreciate the opportunity to be
All
on
right.
with you, and thank you for that.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. So what'd you think of the interview? If there's any information that you want to know more of or want to learn about, then provide us with feedback by leaving a comment below. And if you like what we're producing, then feel free to subscribe to our channel, share this video with your network, and as well, click on that bell for all notifications, because we would not be here without you. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone.